Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the top stories. Donald Trump has vowed further global tariffs a day after imposing import taxes on China, Canada and Mexico. The two nations that border America have hit back, saying retaliatory tariffs are incoming, while Asian markets fell during Monday trading. A bomb has exploded in a Moscow apartment block, reportedly killing one and injuring 4 others. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone strikes targeting Russia's energy system have triggered major fires. Meanwhile, a US envoy says both countries need to give a little to find a solution to the war. Israel's military has reportedly destroyed multiple buildings in Jenin, while an alleged Israeli strike on a refugee camp killed a 73-year-old man hours earlier. The military announced that it had killed 50 Palestinian terrorists in the West Bank since mid-January. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned Panama to immediately reduce China's influence over the Panama Canal. In face-to-face talks with Panamanian leader Jose Raul Molino, Rubio threatened US action. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has flown to Washington to meet President Donald Trump. This meeting, due on Tuesday, comes as the deadline to talk with the aim of extending Gaza's ceasefire arrives. The ceasefire in place for just over 2 weeks is set to expire on March the 1st. Under the terms of the deal, talks on the next phase are supposed to begin no later than Monday. However, Israel is yet to publicly unveil a negotiating team for the talks, where Hamas is sending a delegation to Qatar this week. However, the mediator of the truce, Qatar's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, have said that the discussions on the second phase have begun over cool, despite the lack of clarity. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has reported that in over 2 weeks, at least 50 terrorists were killed in the West Bank. The operations included the destruction of 23 buildings at the Jenin refugee camp, which is identified as terrorist infrastructure. However, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry condemned the Israeli action to blow up large neighbourhoods, describing the result as a brutal scene. First, joining us on this story, we have our correspondent Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, can we get some information, please, specifically on these strikes that we've seen in the West Bank?
Well, absolutely, Josh. If you see, the Israeli strikes in the Jenin area of the West Bank have killed about 5 people in total. These 5 people include one aged man and one teenager named Ahmad Al-Sadi, who is 16-year-old. And one of the Israeli strikes had caused a simultaneous explosion in the building area around the Jenin refugee camp. So the entire there is a lot of debris where the Israeli strikes have happened in Jenin area, and the debris is being cleared by the concerned authorities at the moment. Yes, Josh, back to you in the studios.
Joining us also to discuss this topic, we have Rohan Gunaratne, an international affairs expert, joining us from Singapore. Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us today. And before we discuss the impending meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, I'd like to talk firstly about the scenes that we've seen in the West Bank, of course similar to what we saw before the ceasefire in Gaza. Can you explain the sort of state on the ground for us? While we fix our line with Rohan, I will move to Avram Shalev, who is a lawyer and researcher at the Kohelet Policy Forum. We will now move on to that conversation that's coming, Abraham, between Donald Trump and, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu. What do you think the outcome of this will be? Do you think we'll see an extension to the ceasefire, or is there another plan for Netanyahu as he looks past this ceasefire deal?
Well, Trump and his administration have made clear that Hamas cannot continue to rule over the Gaza Strip at the end of the ceasefire. I think that we'll see positive developments. Right? Trump has spoken about neighboring countries opening up their borders to allow refugees from Gaza, those who want, to leave the Gaza Strip, which Jordan and Egypt have been very, very much opposed to. I think that we will see a positive direction as Trump will pressure countries that want Gazans to remain trapped under Hamas's regime, to allow them to leave the Strip.
And what do you think about the action that has taken place over the last sort of day or two in the West Bank? Of course, Israel's military has said that around 50 terrorists have been killed, but the scenes that we've looked at regarding, of course, the strikes and the buildings being blown up, what's the motive behind this for Israel's military?
Well, the primary lesson of October 7th is that Israel cannot allow terrorism to fester and to grow. Since October 7th, Iran has been stepping up its efforts to smuggle weapons to Palestinian terror groups in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, and to provoke wider unrest, to open up a new front against Israel. And within the past few months, we've seen many deadly terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians and soldiers. So you have major terrorist infrastructure, weapons, terrorist organizations operating in Jenin, in these cities. And we just need to remember that these areas are only a short distance from Israel's major cities. So Israel's trying to prevent Iran and Hamas and other terrorist organizations from opening up another front against Israel.
Abraham, just to finish off, what does Israel want to see out of these continued negotiations, and what does Israel want to see from the 1st of March moving forward?
Israel wants to see two things, which may be to a certain degree contradictory, and the results may be a compromise between these two objectives. But of course, Israel both wants to see all of the Israeli hostages freed, who have now been close to 500 days. Over 80 hostages still held in Hamas captivity. And of course, Israel wants to see victory, the end of Hamas rule. And any rebuilding of Gaza can only come right after Hamas no longer rules over Gaza and after Hamas no longer poses a threat to Israel.
Abraham Shalev, thank you very much for your time. We now move on, and a bomb has exploded in a luxury Russian apartment, killing at least one person and injuring 4 others. The attack seems to have been targeting a pro-Russian parliamentary leader from eastern Ukraine, according to the state-run TASS news agency. Meanwhile, Ukrainian strikes have hit Russia's energy infrastructure, leading to fires at oil depots within Russian territory. This comes as Kyiv and Moscow traded blame for a strike on a school in a Ukrainian-occupied town in Russia's Kursk region a day earlier. The Ukrainian Air Force said that 4 people were killed in an attack on a 3-storey former school building, sheltering evacuated civilians, with dozens more fished from the rubble. On the other hand, Russia has not given a toll for the strike, but accused Kyiv of targeting the school in a crime that has no forgiveness and no statute of limitations. Aditya joining us again on this one. I really again want to look at the strikes that we've seen coming in the Kursk region. Can you explain the complexity over the situation given the territory?
Well, Josh, if you see, Ukraine has struck Russia with about 70 drones. The 70 drones have specifically targeted the oil facilities and the energy infrastructure of Russia. What has happened due to the massive Ukrainian drone attack on Russia. The fire was caught at one of the major oil refinery and a gas processing plant, due to which the flights between the Volga mountains and the Caucasus mountains were also affected. So particularly if we see the aim of as far as the strikes is concerned, the aim of the Ukrainian army has been to strike the energy infrastructure and the oil infrastructure of Russia, which is a major asset of the Russian regime. What you say, recently what had happened, the United States of America has also, the European Union and the United States and its allies had sanctioned the energy infrastructure of Russia. So it needs to be seen from here on how does this conflict between Russia and Ukraine moves forward. Yes, Josh, back to you in the studios.
Also joining us to discuss these breaking developments, we have Glenn Grant, a former advisor to the Defence Minister of Ukraine, who's joining us from Latvia. Glenn Grant, thank you very much for your time. I want to look at the strikes and the action that we've seen from Ukraine within the past 24 hours or so. Of course, attacking the energy infrastructure, but what we've got more recently coming out of Russia is a bomb that has hit Moscow. Is this, again, Ukraine moving towards furthering the fighting and trying to hit back against Russia? And also, what impact do you think that might have on ending this war diplomatically?
These things are quite complex. I mean, if you actually look, Ukraine has been very, very specific about not targeting civilian areas and only concentrating on the energy. And they've been doing that extremely successfully. The attack in Moscow, I think, is a much more targeted focus upon someone who's actually been a murderer of Ukrainian citizens in eastern Ukraine. So he is a legitimate target for Ukrainian security services to go after. And I think this is what they've done. And they will keep doing this to people who actually have terrorized or killed Ukrainians wherever they are.
Also joining us to discuss these developments, we have Andrea Lucidi, who is a war reporter joining us from Luhansk. Thank you, Andrea, for your time. I want to delve deeper into these attacks within Russia that we've seen from Ukraine. This isn't the first time somebody's been targeted. There, of course, was the scooter attack not too long ago. So how do you think Russia responds to this clear and direct attack within Russia, within Moscow?
So what we saw in Moscow today is clearly a terroristic attack against a civilian building, because the bomb exploded in a residential complex in Moscow. And the target of this attack, the founder of Arbat battalion, Armen Sergesyan, was dying. Follow what some Telegram channel that was their correspondent were near the building are reported, but this information is not confirmed till this moment. Of course, Sargsyan was from a lot of time present in the Ukrainian database that Mirotvorets, that for someone is a Ukrainian kill list, like other people that were died, like Andrea Rocchelli, for example, Italian photojournalist that was killed by Ukrainian force in 2014 in the contact line in Donbass. And the Committee of Investigation of Russia start to work for determine what's happened today. But till this moment, I don't have any news about it, because no new information are being published by the Russian authorities.
Andrea, sticking with you and looking at the strikes that we had on the school in the Kursk region yesterday, there was, of course, a sort of, not debate, but a discussion and disagreement on who was responsible, how many people were killed. It seems that the two nations at the moment are further away than they have been for a long time on coming together and discussing a potential end to the fighting. But a US envoy has, of course, said that both sides need to give a little bit in order for that to come closer. How realistic do you think that is?
So I want to say that till this moment, I never visited the region of Kursk, but in short time I will be there for reporting from there. And yes, this attack is very, very strange, but it's not the first time that Ukrainians are hitting facilities like this. For Moscow, this school was transformed by Ukrainian army in a concentration camp. They said the Russian authority used this designation for this college in Surda, concentration camp for prisoners of war and for other people like civilians that are resisting from the occupation, from the Ukrainian occupation of this city. This city is at this moment like 10 kilometers away, far from the front line, and it's under Ukrainian control, like a part of the Kursk region. That it's interesting in this moment by an anti-terrorism operation by by Russian forces. For Moscow, this was a concentration camp, and in the last weeks, the Russian media published a lot of material about the discovery of human body, civilians' body, in the building that Russian troops are liberated from the Ukrainian occupation. And 2 days ago, the Russian investigation committee published a video of an interrogation of a Ukrainian prisoner of war that admit a lot of crimes that he make or he saw in Kursk region made by Ukrainian troops. I think in this moment the situation in Kursk is about Kursk. It's very specific and very hard, because for Kiev it's important to continue to control a part of Kursk region, because with Donald Trump, since Donald Trump is on the office of President of the United States, the government of Kiev have clear the idea that they cannot proceed this war alone without the support of the US.
Yes.
And
sorry to interrupt you, Andrea. My apologies. We are running very short on time. So I just want to quickly pop back to Glenn Grant, and I want to pose the question again regarding the US envoy's statement that both countries have to come together. Is this something that you think Zelensky is going to be willing to do?
Well, I don't think so, especially while we've got people like Andrea who are just spouting untruths left, right and centre. The bomb that hit the building was full of old people that the civil military organization in Ukraine have been helping out of their houses. They've been left behind with no food and in many cases no medicines. And so they were putting them together to take them to Sumy, to somewhere, to a place of safety when they were hit by the actual bomb. And there is no attempt by the Ukrainians to do anything vicious, as Andrea is saying, and I hope he finds some truth when he goes to Kursk. But the two sides are not going to come together as long as Russia keeps targeting civil places and keeps targeting the civilian population, because you can't have peace when there is an existential threat to the whole of your country. And I'm sorry, but I don't see there going to be much coming together until Russia removes itself from all the areas and lands that it's put itself in.
Glenn Grant and Andrea Lucidi, thank you very much for your time. As we get more information on the developments that we've had within the last 24 hours, we of course will bring those to you. But we now move to US President Donald Trump, who has threatened to impose tariffs on EU goods after levying duties on Mexico, Canada and China. While in Maryland, Trump stated that tariffs on European imports could happen pretty soon. The EU has condemned the move and warned it will respond firmly if targeted. Meanwhile, Mexico, Canada and China are preparing for retaliatory measures. Here's the updates.
US President Donald Trump has hinted that after he slapped 25% levies on goods from Mexico and Canada and an additional 10% tax on imports from China, the European Union could be next to face tariffs. While arriving into Maryland from Florida, Trump told that tariffs on EU goods imported into the US could happen pretty soon.
It will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And, we have over a $300 billion deficit. I wouldn't say there's a timeline, but it's going to be pretty soon.
The US president added he enjoyed good relations with British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, and that trade issues with the UK could be worked out.
Prime Minister Starmer has been very nice. We've had a couple of meetings. We've had numerous phone calls. We're getting along very well. We'll see whether or not we can balance out our budget.
For EU's part, the 27-member bloc has condemned Trump's decision to move ahead with tariffs against Canada, Mexico and China, and warned that it will respond firmly if it also becomes a target. Mexico and Canada have vowed to take retaliatory measures, while China said it could take corresponding countermeasures. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now head to the continent of Europe for more of the latest news there. Sir Keir Starmer is heading to Brussels to join a gathering of European Union leaders. This is the first time a British Prime Minister has done so since Brexit, which was agreed years ago. He is heading to the English Channel for talks focused on defence and security cooperation and will also meet NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. The visit is said to take place on Monday. Georgian police have arrested 2 opposition leaders during a street protest against the ruling party on Sunday. The leader of the liberal pro-European Akali party, Nika Melia, and former Tbilisi mayor Gigi Ugalava were the ones arrested. Daily mass protests have rocked the nation. This has happened since the Georgian Dream Party claimed victory in the October parliamentary elections. Berlin police said on Sunday that at least 160,000 people attended a rally in the German capital to protest the Conservative Christian Democratic Union. Protests took place for the support of the far-right AfD in Parliament earlier this week, for what they see as a breach of a taboo in post-war German politics. Greece's Santorini island has been on high alert. There have been more than 200 tremors since Friday. Authorities have shut down schools and sent rescue teams to the tourist island. The strongest was a magnitude 4.6 quake which struck the waters between Santorini and Amagos. This happened on Sunday afternoon local time. The United Kingdom is set to become the first country to introduce laws against artificial intelligence tools. The tools, used to generate sexualised images of children, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said was increasing. In an attempt to curb this phenomenon, the UK will make it a crime to possess, create or distribute artificial intelligence tools that generate sexual content targeting children. 35-year-old Adele Haenel has accused filmmaker Christoph Rugier, who's 60, of assaulting her in the early 2000s when she was between 12 and he was in his late 30s. Accusations he has called pure lies. On Monday, the court will give its verdict for the case. This was seen as a Me Too landmark trial. That is all we have time for, but we'll be back with more of your latest international news very soon.